He heard crying beneath a bridge on a rainy night and found 2 5-year-old girls with no names on paper. When a billionaire chose to protect them, a legal clock began ticking. 48 hours, one decision, and a quiet courtroom fight that would decide whether the girls could finally belong. Rain washed the city in slow silver sheets, turning streetlights into blurred halos. Cassian Vale's sedan glided beneath the overpass like a quiet thought. Dark windows, soft leather, the kind of silence money buys when it's tired of being seen. Then the sound happened. Not traffic, not wind. A thin, trembling cry that didn't ask for attention, just existence. Cassian's hand tightened on the door handle before he even realized he'd leaned forward. The driver checked the mirror. Sir Cassian didn't answer. He listened again. 2 voices, one crying, one whispering, small, urgent, trying to soothe like a child imitating a grown-up. "Stop here," Cassian said. The car rolled to a stop at the edge of the shadow. Cassian stepped out into the raincoat collar up shoes, meeting wet concrete. Under the bridge, the air smelled like cold metal and yesterday's storm. He walked toward Pillar 3 because he didn't know why, but something in him chose that direction. And there they were. 2 tiny girls, maybe 5, huddled close beneath a patch of dry space that wasn't really dry, just less wet. Their hoodies were faded. Their sneakers were clean but worn down in the soles, as if they'd been walking too long for such little bodies. One girl hugged a ripped backpack to her chest, like it held her heartbeat. The other protected a folded piece of paper under her hoodie, shielding it from raindrops as if it was priceless. When Cassian spoke, his voice came out lower than usual, careful, deliberate. "Hey." The crying stopped abruptly. 2 sets of eyes lifted. Wide. Watchful. Not terrified. More like they were deciding whether the world would allow them to stay where they were. Cassian crouched, keeping distance, palms open. "I'm not here to scare you," he said softly. "Are you okay?" The backpack girl didn't answer. She just leaned closer to her twin. The paper girl swallowed, then whispered, polite as a secret, "We're fine." Cassian felt something in his chest shift quietly, dangerously, like a door unlocking in a house he thought was empty. Cassian stayed crouched, rain tapping the bridge above them like impatient fingers. "What are your names?" he asked. The girl with the paper hesitated, then spoke as if names were fragile. "Lenny," the backpack girl followed, voice even smaller but firm. "Nova." Cassian nodded, letting the names settle into the air like something real. "I'm Cassian." Nova watched him the way kids watch dogs they haven't decided to trust. No drama, just careful math. Lenny kept the paper tucked tight, her fingers pinching it, like if she loosened her grip, it might float away. Cassian tried the next question gently. "Do you have someone I can call, a parent, a relative, anyone?" Nova looked at Lenny first, like answers were shared property. Lenny glanced down and shook her head once. "We're waiting," Lenny said. Cassian blinked. Waiting for who? Lenny's voice stayed soft, but the words were heavy. "For a place." "A place," Cassian repeated slower now. Nova lifted her chin the tiniest bit. "A place that doesn't send us away." It wasn't begging. It wasn't performance. It sounded like a rule they'd learned from the world: don't ask for too much, just ask for permission to be somewhere. Cassian's throat tightened. He kept his face steady. "Have you been here long?" Nova answered honestly. "Sometimes," Lenny added. "Not when it's busy." Cassian's eyes flicked around the underpass. No screaming, no chaos, just cold air and shadows and the steady drip of water. The kind of place adults drive past without seeing. He took a slow breath. "Are you hungry?" Nova shook her head fast, too fast. "We're okay." Lenny's stomach made a small, traitorous sound. She froze, cheeks coloring with embarrassment. Cassian didn't smile. He didn't tease. He just made it normal. "Okay. We'll get food. That's not a problem." Nova narrowed her eyes. Food costs. Cassian nodded. It does. Nova pressed her lips together. Then why Cassian looked at the two little faces so young, so careful, and he chose the truth that wouldn't scare them. Because you're kids, he said quietly. And kids shouldn't have to make a schedule to survive rain. Lenny's fingers tightened around the paper at that word schedule like Cassian had guessed something he wasn't supposed to know. Cassian stood slowly, keeping his movements calm. Come with me, just for tonight. Warm. Safe. Nova whispered, suspicious and hopeful at once. Safe is real, Cassian nodded. It can be, and we'll do it the right way. Cassian offered his hand not too close. Lenny didn't take it. She wasn't rude, just cautious. Instead, she lifted the folded paper slightly, as if she needed to show him the reason. Cassian noticed and softened his voice. What is that? Lenny glanced at Nova for permission. Nova gave a tiny nod. Then Lenny unfolded the paper with the seriousness of someone opening a contract. It wasn't a drawing. It wasn't a letter. It was a list written in blocky, careful letters that a 5-year-old must have practiced over and over until it looked right. Rain days under bridge pillar. 3 cold days, bus station, warm air, sun days, library steps, not inside if told to leave, say sorry and go. Cassian stared. For a moment, his world deal's boardrooms, signatures felt irrelevant compared to one small sheet of paper. Nova pointed at the last line and said it like a rule she was proud of. We don't argue, Lenny added quietly. We're polite. Cassian's jaw tightened, not in anger at them, at the idea that politeness was their armor. Who made this? He asked, keeping his tone gentle. Nova shrugged like the answer was obvious. We did. Lenny's voice dropped. It helps us remember where people don't get mad. Cassian swallowed. No bruises, no violence, no dramatic villain. Just 2 children learning to shrink in advance, so adults wouldn't have to feel guilty. He took off his scarf, warm, expensive, and wrapped it around both girls at once, so they shared it shoulder to shoulder like a small blanket of belonging. He was careful, respectful, giving them space. You don't have to do this anymore, he said, voice steady. Not alone. Nova's eyes searched his face. Is this a trick? Cassian shook his head. No, Lenny whispered, barely audible over the rain. People say no, and then they leave. Cassian felt the words hit him in a place he didn't know was still alive. He looked at them, 2 tiny girls under a bridge holding a paper like a life raft, and he made a decision that didn't feel like charity. It felt like responsibility. Tonight, he said, you're coming with me. Warm. Food. A bed. Nova blinked. And tomorrow Cassian didn't promise magic. He promised action. Tomorrow, he said, we start fixing the paper, the legal way, so no one can erase you again. Lenny folded the schedule slowly, then tucked it into the backpack like it was evidence, and like for the first time, it might actually matter. The ride away from the bridge was quiet in a way that felt heavy. Lenny and Nova sat close together in the back seat, Cassian's scarf still wrapped around both of them like a shared secret. City lights slid past the windows, stretching into long streaks of gold and white. Nova counted them silently. Lenny watched Cassian's reflection in the glass, as if checking he hadn't vanished. Cassian spoke first, keeping his voice even. If you need to stop me, say so. Nova blinked. Why? Because this is your choice too. That surprised them. Nova nodded once, as if filing the rule away for later. Cassian glanced back. Are you hungry? Nova opened her mouth to say no, then stopped. Lenny answered instead, carefully honest. A little. That's okay, Cassian said. A little is enough. At a quiet diner, Cassian ordered soup, bread, and warm milk. Nothing fancy, nothing overwhelming. He sat across from them, not watching too closely, giving them space to exist without performance. Nova tasted the soup, eyes widening. It's hot. Yes, Cassian said. It's supposed to be. Lenny broke bread into exact halves and offered one to Nova before touching her own. Cassian noticed. He said nothing, but something inside him tightened. Back at the penthouse, staff moved softly, no questions, no staring. A guest room waited with clean sheets, soft light, and a night lamp shaped like a small moon. Nova touched the bed with one finger. "Is this for looking?" Cassian shook his head. "For sleeping." Lenny hesitated at the doorway. "Do we have to leave early?" Cassian answered slowly, choosing truth without fear. "No one is asking you to leave tonight." Nova whispered, almost afraid of the words. "Then we can stay." Cassian nodded. "You can stay." And for the first time that night, both girls breathed out at the same time. Morning arrived, gently sunlight spilling through tall windows. Lenny woke first. She sat up instantly alert, like sleep had been a temporary pause. Nova followed, rubbing her eyes, then freezing when she remembered where they were. "Did we break a rule?" Nova whispered. Cassian knocked once before opening the door. He didn't enter until they nodded. "Good morning," he said. They stared at him, waiting for the catch. Cassian smiled faintly. "I made a list." Nova stiffened. "Rules, yes," Cassian said, "but different ones." He placed a small card on the table. 1. Eat when you're hungry. 2. Sleep when you're tired. 3. Ask questions when you're confused. 4. No one sends you away without explaining why. Lenny read it slowly. Safe is Rule 4, Cassian nodded. Exactly, Nova frowned. What if we make mistakes? Cassian answered without hesitation. Then we fix them. The girls exchanged a look. This rule was new, unfamiliar. Later, while they colored quietly, Cassian stepped into his office and made a call. "Noah," he said, "I need you, now." On the other end, Noah Klein's voice sharpened. "What happened? I found 2 5-year-olds under an overpass. They have names? They have no file?" Silence. Then carefully, "Are they safe?" "Yes." "Did you report yet?" "Not officially. I wanted to do this right." Noah exhaled, then listened closely. "We need to involve child services today. Transparency matters." Cassian looked through the glass wall at Lenny and Nova, heads bent over Crayon's shoulders, touching. "I know," he said. "I just don't want them moved." Noah's voice softened. "Neither do I. But the system moves whether we like it or not." Cassian closed his eyes briefly. Then he said, "We move faster." The knock came mid-morning, firm, polite, unavoidable. Cassian opened the door to a woman with kind eyes and a structured coat. She held a folder close to her chest. "Mr. Vale," she said. "I'm Maris Calder, Child Services." Cassian stepped aside immediately. "Thank you for coming." Maris noted the calm, the order, the absence of panic. That mattered. Inside, Lenny and Nova sat on the couch, feet dangling, hands folded in their laps like they'd rehearsed being small. Maris knelt to their level. "Hi, I'm Maris." Nova tilted her head. "Are you a rule person?" Maris smiled gently. "Yes, but I like kind rules." Lenny asked quietly. "Do we have to go now?" Maris glanced at Cassian before answering honestly. "I don't know yet. We're going to figure things out." She opened her folder. "Can you tell me your full names?" "Lenny Wren," Lenny said. "Nova Wren," Nova followed. Maris typed into her tablet, paused, typed again. Her expression didn't change, but the air did. Cassian noticed immediately. "What is it?" Maris chose her words carefully. "I'm not finding active records." Nova frowned. "We're here." "I see you," Maris said gently. "But the system doesn't." Lenny's fingers tightened in her sleeve. "Is that bad?" Maris didn't lie. "It makes things complicated." Cassian straightened, calm but alert. "What happens now?" Maris looked at him steadily. "We open an emergency intake, but until then there are procedures." Cassian asked the question that mattered most. "Can they stay?" Maris hesitated just a second too long. There's a 48-hour window, she said quietly. After that, placement decisions become harder to change. Nova looked up at Cassian, eyes searching. Are we being sent away? Cassian met her gaze and answered with certainty he hadn't felt before. No, he said. Not without a fight, and not without doing this the right way. Maris Calder worked quietly at the dining table, her tablet angled away from the girls. She asked questions the way professionals do, simple, neutral, never invasive. Favorite color, blue, Nova said. Yellow, Lenny added. Do you remember a doctor or a school? Lenny shook her head slowly. We didn't stay. Maris nodded, not writing anything dramatic, just facts. Cassian stood nearby, hands folded, forcing himself not to hover. He had signed contracts worth billions without breaking a sweat. This watching two 5-year-olds answer questions about their own existence felt harder. Maris typed again. Paused. Then she said something that changed the temperature of the room. There is an older record. Cassian looked up. Older, yes, Maris said. Years back. Incomplete. Never finalized. Nova frowned. What's incomplete? It means someone started something. Maris explained gently and didn't finish. She turned the tablet slightly toward Cassian. One line stood out. Guardian of Record Dorian Pike. Cassian read the name twice. Who is he? Maris kept her voice neutral. On paper, a temporary guardian assigned during an early intake attempt. Nova tilted her head. Guardian means grown up, yes, Maris said. A grown-up who's supposed to help. Nova thought about that, then said plainly he didn't. The sentence wasn't angry, it was factual. Cassian felt his jaw tighten. If there was a guardian, why are there no records now? Maris answered carefully. Because the process wasn't completed. No follow-up documentation, no verified placement. Lenny's voice dropped to a whisper. So, we're missing. Maris looked at her directly. You are not missing, but the paperwork is. Cassian stepped forward. What does that mean for them? Maris closed the tablet. It means there's a legal gap, and gaps attract movement. Movement, Cassian repeated. A transfer, Maris said. Temporary placement elsewhere while the identity issue is resolved. Nova's shoulders stiffened instantly. Elsewhere means not here. Maris didn't deny it. Cassian's voice went steady and cold. How long do we have? Maris met his eyes. 48 hours before the system decides for all of us. The word transfer echoed in the house long after Maris left. Cassian made calls. Noah returned everyone within seconds. Forms were sent. Emails stacked like falling dominoes. Everything moved fast, too fast for two small hearts that had learned what speed usually meant. Lenny and Nova stayed quiet. Too quiet. Cassian noticed it when dinner went untouched. When coloring stopped mid-crayon. When Nova asked out of nowhere if we go to another place. Will the rules be different? Cassian crouched. We don't know yet. That night, Cassian found the guest room unnaturally tidy. The bed was made, pajamas folded, shoes lined up. The backpack was gone. His chest tightened as he moved through the penthouse, heart beating louder than his footsteps. He found them in the laundry room, sitting behind a rolling cart, knees tucked to chests. They hadn't been told to pack. They just did. Nova looked up first. We're ready. Ready for what? Cassian asked, though he already knew. Lenny answered softly. So it's easier. Cassian knelt, careful not to crowd them. Easier for who? Nova's voice wavered just slightly. For you. Lenny added, eyes fixed on the floor. You said rules matter. We heard talking. About papers. Nova swallowed. If papers make trouble, we can go. The sentence landed like a weight. Cassian took a breath. Then another. No, he said firmly but gently. You don't leave because adults are uncomfortable. Nova blinked. But that's usually how it works. Cassian shook his head. Not this time. He picked up the folded paper, the survival schedule, and held it carefully. This helped you survive. Nova nodded. Cassian set it aside and took out a fresh sheet. We're making a new list. He wrote slowly, clearly, today, stay tomorrow, stay the day after, still stay. Lenny stared. That's allowed. Cassian met her eyes. I'm making it allowed. Nova hesitated. What if the system says no? Cassian's voice didn't rise. It grounded. Then I say yes louder. Legally. The girls didn't cheer. They didn't cry. They just leaned into each other a little less tense than before. For the first time, packing stopped meaning goodbye. Morning arrived with paperwork. Noah Klein walked in carrying a laptop, a legal pad, and the kind of focus that meant things were about to get serious. I've reviewed everything, he said quietly to Cassian. The guardian of record can be a problem. Cassian folded his arms. Explain. No active abuse. No criminal flags, Noah said. Just absence and paperwork that was never finished. Nova, sitting nearby, raised her hand like she was in school. Is absence bad? Noah paused, then answered honestly. For kids, yes. Maris returned mid-morning with forms and timelines. She spoke clearly, respectfully, never above the girls' heads. If we don't establish a verified identity and temporary caregiver authorization, she explained, the system will assign placement elsewhere. Lenny looked at the calendar on the wall. How many sleeps is 48 hours? Maris answered gently. 2. Nova whispered. That's not many. Cassian felt the pressure settle in his chest like a countdown. Noah typed fast. We'll file an emergency petition today. That starts protection. Maris nodded. It also notifies interested parties. Cassian's eyes sharpened. Including Dorian Pike. Yes, Maris said. He'll be informed. Nova frowned. He's the paper grown up, yes, Maris said. On paper. Cassian stood straighter. Then we fix the paper. Noah looked at him. Cassian, I need to be clear. This becomes a legal fight. Public records, hearings, oversight. Cassian glanced at Lenny and Nova, who were now coloring again, drawing a house with 3 stick figures. I can handle that, Cassian said. They shouldn't have to. Maris closed her folder. I'll schedule the emergency review, Noah added, and I'll prepare to challenge Pike's standing. Nova looked up. Does this mean we're staying today? Cassian answered without hesitation. Yes. Lenny pressed her crayon harder, finishing the roof. Then tomorrow, Cassian met her gaze steady and sure. Tomorrow, he said, we fight for your names. And somewhere between the ticking clock and the quiet coloring, the story stopped being about shelter and became about recognition. Dorian Pike arrived without urgency. No flashing lights, no raised voices, just a black sedan stopping neatly at the curb, a man stepping out in a tailored coat, hair perfectly in place like he belonged anywhere. Paperwork existed. Cassian watched from the living room window as Pike adjusted his cufflinks, glanced at the building and smiled faintly. Not nervous, not angry, prepared. Inside, Lenny and Nova were with Maris in the adjacent room, coloring quietly under supervision. Cassian made sure they couldn't hear what was about to happen. The door opened. Mr. Vale Pike said smoothly, extending a hand. I appreciate you taking temporary responsibility. Truly, Cassian didn't take the hand. You're Dorian Pike. Pike's smile didn't fade. Guardian of record. On paper, Cassian replied. Pike chuckled softly. Paper matters, especially in rooms like this. Noah Klein stepped forward. Mr. Pike, we've requested documentation of your ongoing care. Pike nodded. Of course. He handed over a thin folder, inside a single form, old but official. Maris examined it carefully. This establishes a temporary guardianship assignment, she said. But there's no follow-up. Pike sighed, practiced concern. The system is complicated. Things fall through. Cassian's voice was level. Children don't fall through. Adults drop them. Pike tilted his head, studying Cassian with polite curiosity. I searched for them. Truly. But resources are limited. I'm glad you provided shelter. Shelter, Cassian repeated. They weren't misplaced luggage. Pike's eyes flicked briefly toward the hallway. They're children. They need structure. Family, Noah replied calmly. Then show evidence of your involvement. Pike spread his hands. I did my part. The forms prove it. Maris closed the folder. Mr. Pike, without proof of continued responsibility, your standing is weak. Pike's smile thinned. Weak or not, it exists, and the law respects continuity. Cassian leaned forward slightly. So do I, which is why they're staying. Pike's gaze sharpened. For now. Noah interjected, We've filed for emergency caregiver authorization. Pike nodded. Then I'll file an objection. The room went still. Pike adjusted his coat. Nothing personal, Mr. Vale. I just prefer things orderly. Cassian answered coldly. So do I. As Pike left, his smile returned. And Cassian understood something crucial. This wasn't a fight of cruelty. It was a fight of paperwork versus presence. That night, the penthouse felt smaller. Not because of the space, but because of the clock. Noah spread documents across the dining table, tapping dates and clauses. Pike has legal standing just enough to slow us down. Cassian leaned back, arms crossed. Slow isn't enough. No, Noah agreed. But it buys him time. And time triggers protocol. Maris joined them, calm but firm. If the court doesn't grant temporary authorization within 48 hours, placement procedures will activate. Cassian looked toward the hallway where Lenny and Nova slept. They won't be moved. Maris met his gaze. Intentions don't override systems. The words were gentle but sharp. Later, Cassian checked on the girls. Nova slept curled on her side, clutching the scarf. Lenny lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Cassian sat on the edge of the bed. Can't sleep. Lenny hesitated. Are we in trouble? Cassian shook his head. No. Then why is everyone serious? She asked. Cassian chose honesty without weight, because grown-ups made mistakes before, and we're fixing them. Nova stirred eyes half open. Fixing takes time. Yes. Nova whispered, do we have time? Cassian's chest tightened. We're making time. The next morning, Maris returned with updates. The emergency review is scheduled, she said. Tomorrow afternoon. Noah nodded. That's our window. And Pike Cassian asked. He's filed an objection, Maris replied, claiming rightful guardianship. Nova, sitting nearby with her knees hugged to her chest, looked up. Does that mean he wants us? No one answered immediately. Cassian knelt beside her. He wants control on paper. That's not the same as wanting you. Nova processed this. Paper doesn't know us. No, Cassian said. But the court can. Lenny tugged his sleeve. If the court says no. Cassian didn't interrupt. He waited. Will we have to pack again? Cassian felt the question land deep, but he didn't let it shake his voice. No, he said. You don't pack anymore unless it's for a trip you choose. Nova tilted her head. Like vacation, Cassian smiled softly. Exactly like that. The girls nodded, absorbing the idea carefully. Behind the calm, the clock kept ticking, but for the first time, the countdown wasn't happening in silence. The courtroom was quieter than Cassian expected. No drama, no echoing shouts, just polished wood, neutral walls, and the soft shuffle of papers that decided lives every day. Lenny and Nova sat with their child advocate, feet dangling, hands linked. Cassian sat behind them, present, not hovering. Pike sat across the aisle, composed, confident. The judge entered, expression professional and unreadable. This is an emergency caregiver review, she said. We are here to determine temporary placement pending identity verification. Pike's lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client is the legal guardian of record. These children should be returned to him immediately. Noah rose slowly. Your Honor, guardianship on record does not equal guardianship in practice. The judge raised an eyebrow. Explain. Noah laid out the evidence, methodical, clean. No school enrollment, no medical follow-up, no housing record, no proof of care. Pike interjected smoothly. The system failed me, Noah replied evenly. The system failed the children. Maris was called next. The children are safe where they are, she testified. Mr. Vale reported immediately, complied fully, and provides a stable environment. The judge turned to Cassian. Mr. Vale, why do you want these children in your care? Cassian stood. He didn't speak like a billionaire. He spoke like a grown-up who'd been paying attention. They asked for a place that wouldn't send them away, he said. I can provide that legally, responsibly, with oversight, until their identities are restored. The judge nodded slowly. And if oversight is required, Cassian answered instantly. I welcome it. There was a pause, then something unexpected. The judge looked at the child advocate. May the children speak briefly. The advocate nodded. Nova stood first, voice small but clear. We just want to stay where the rules are kind. Lenny followed, holding her folded paper. I want a name that works everywhere. The courtroom stilled. The judge set down her pen. Temporary caregiver authorization is granted, she said at last. Effective immediately. Pike stiffened. The judge continued. Identity verification will proceed under court supervision. Mr. Pike's guardianship is suspended pending review. Cassian exhaled slowly. Lenny squeezed Nova's hand. Nova whispered, We're staying. Cassian nodded, eyes burning but steady. Yes, he said softly. You are. And for the first time, the law didn't just process them, it protected them. The ruling gave them air, but not peace. Temporary caregiver authorization meant Lenny and Nova could stay. It did not mean the world suddenly made sense. Cassian felt that difference immediately. Protection was a door held open by law. Certainty was a room they still hadn't entered. The next morning, Noah arrived with a larger team, quiet professionals, who spoke in checklists and timelines. Maris joined them, bringing files that smelled faintly of printer ink and urgency. We're tracing the first intake, Maris explained. The moment their names entered the system. Cassian listened, jaw tight. How does a child end up with a guardian on paper? And nothing else. Maris didn't soften the truth. It happens when a process begins, but never finishes. A temporary assignment without follow-through. Sometimes because of overload. Sometimes because someone benefits from delay. Cassian glanced toward the playroom where Lenny and Nova built a tower with soft blocks. They weren't performing. They were just 5. Noah opened a timeline on his screen. There's a gap of nearly 2 years. No schooling records. No medical continuity. No address that sticks. Cassian exhaled. They weren't invisible. They were unclaimed. Maris nodded. And unclaimed children fall into gray zones. That afternoon, Cassian took the girls to the kitchen island for a snack: apple slices, peanut butter water. Simple rituals. Grounding. Nova watched him peel the apple. Are you looking for our names? Yes, Cassian said. The official ones. Lenny chewed slowly. What if you don't find them? Cassian didn't dodge. Then we build them correctly. Nova tilted her head. Build names, yes, Cassian said gently. With witnesses, with records, with truth. Later, Noah returned with something small and heavy. A community center sign-in sheet, he said. Art Day, years ago. Cassian leaned in. 2 names written by small hands. Lenny Wren, Nova Wren. Lenny's letters were careful. Nova's slanted bold. Nova smiled. That's mine. Noah nodded. It proves presence. That you existed here. That you weren't nowhere. Cassian felt a quiet anger, not loud, not explosive, settle into purpose. Dorian Pike, meanwhile, sent a letter. Polite, legal, cold. I request the court expedite return of the minors to my guardianship. Cassian read it twice. Then once more. Paper wants to move faster than people, Noah said. Cassian folded the letter. Then we slow the paper down with truth. That night, Cassian found Lenny awake, tracing the letters on her folded schedule. Are you worried? He asked. Lenny nodded once. If names go away, do people go away too? Cassian sat beside her. No, names don't make people real. They help other people remember. Lenny considered this. I want them to remember us. Cassian met her gaze. They will. The house learned a new rhythm: meetings by day, quiet by night. It was during the quiet that misunderstandings grew. Cassian overheard Nova whispering to Lenny in the hallway. He didn't mean to listen, he just happened to pause. They're talking again, Nova said. Lenny replied softly. Talking means deciding. Nova's voice wobbled. Deciding means moving. Cassian stepped forward before the thought could spiral. Hey! Both girls turned, startled. Nova's shoulders squared. We can pack. Cassian crouched. Why would you pack? Because adults decide, Nova said, too wise for five, and kids go where decided. Lenny held the survival schedule against her chest. We don't want to make it harder. Cassian took a breath, slow and deliberate. You're not making anything harder. Nova frowned. But the man from the paper wants us, Cassian corrected gently. He wants control, not you. Silence. Lenny asked, careful, is there a difference? Cassian nodded. A big one. He led them to the table and pulled out 2 sheets of paper. Let's do something together. Nova eyed the paper. Another list, yes. Cassian said, but this one is different. He wrote at the top, things that are true. Tell me one, he said. Nova thought. We like apples. Cassian wrote it down. Lenny added, we stay together. Cassian wrote that too. Nova said, you listen. Cassian paused, then wrote it. Lenny whispered, we're not invisible. Cassian's pen pressed harder. That's right. They read the list together. It wasn't legal, it wasn't official, but it mattered. The next day, Maris returned with an update. The court wants additional corroboration. Witnesses, places. Cassian nodded. We have them. They visited the library steps during open hours with permission. The librarian remembered 2 girls who always sat outside reading covers through the glass. They never asked to go in, she said softly. They just wanted to be close to books. Cassian felt something twist in his chest. At the bus station, a maintenance worker recognized them. They stood near the warm air vent, always polite, always gone before rush hour. Noah recorded statements, dates, times, careful truth. That evening, Cassian received another message from Pike requesting an expedited hearing. Nova saw Cassian's face tighten. Is it bad? Cassian shook his head. It means he's in a hurry. Nova nodded. Hurries mean mistakes. Cassian smiled despite himself. Sometimes. Lenny held up the things that are true list. Can we add one more? Cassian slid the paper back. What is it? Lenny wrote slowly. Letters careful, we are wanted. Cassian didn't correct her grammar. He just let it stand. The second hearing was scheduled for the following morning. Noah prepared exhibits. Maris coordinated oversight. Cassian signed affidavits with a calm that surprised even himself. This wasn't about winning. It was about accuracy. In the playroom, Lenny and Nova built a city from blocks, bridges, towers, houses with doors that opened. Nova pointed. This one doesn't send people away. Lenny nodded. It has rules. Cassian watched, heart steadying. This was what continuity looked like. At court, the judge reviewed new submissions. Pike's counsel argued procedure, urgency, disruption. Noah responded with clarity. Urgency without care creates harm. Maris testified again. The children demonstrate stability in their current placement. Removing them now would undermine trust. The judge listened. Then she did something unexpected. She asked for the things that are true list. Cassian handed it over, uncertain. The judge read it silently. When she looked up, her voice was even. "This isn't evidence," she said, "but it's context." She turned to Pike. "Mr. Pike, can you provide a comparable record of relationship?" Pike hesitated. "Just a beat too long." "No," he said finally. "I cannot." The judge nodded as if that settled something. She issued a directive: expanded identity verification supervised by the court. Continued temporary placement with Cassian. Suspension of Pike's standing pending outcome. No applause. No speeches. Just a clean order that prioritized continuity. Back home, Lenny and Nova waited at the window. Cassian stepped in. Nova searched his face. "Are we okay?" Cassian nodded. "You're okay?" Lenny exhaled. "For how long?" Cassian answered with honesty that didn't frighten. "Long enough to make it permanent." Nova smiled, small and bright. "Permanent is my favorite word." That night, Cassian tucked them in. No rush, no clock. Lenny held up the survival schedule one last time. "Can we keep this?" "Yes," Cassian said. "As history." Nova placed it in a drawer. "We don't need it every day." Cassian closed the drawer gently. The truth hadn't shouted. It hadn't accused. It had simply stayed long enough to be seen. The court order should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like a thin bridge over deep water. Cassian understood it in the quietest way possible through a notification on Noah's phone. Not a siren, not a shout. Just a line of text that made Noah's jaw tighten before he said a word. Cassian noticed. "What is it?" Noah stared at the screen for a beat longer than necessary, then looked up. Pike filed a motion. Maris, seated across the table with her folder open, didn't flinch. "An emergency one." Noah nodded. "Expedited review. He's claiming we're delaying identity verification. He's pushing the best interest argument in a way that sounds reasonable." Cassian's eyes narrowed. How can a man who can't prove ongoing care argue best interest? Noah's voice stayed calm. "Because paperwork can sound like care if you say it smoothly enough." The penthouse kitchen felt suddenly smaller. Lenny and Nova were at the island drawing with washable markers. The girls weren't listening on purpose, but children have radar. They heard tension the way adults hear storms. Nova lifted her head. "Is it the paper man again?" Cassian walked over and knelt. "Yes, sweetheart. But it's grown-up talk. We're handling it." Nova's brow wrinkled. "Handling means more meetings." "Yes." Lenny traced a circle on her page. "Do meetings decide where we sleep?" Cassian's chest tightened, but he kept his face gentle. "Meetings decide paperwork. We decide your safety." Lenny looked up. "We can decide," Cassian nodded. "In this house, you're part of the decision." Maris stepped closer, voice careful. "Cassian, we need to keep things transparent. The judge will want proof we're not obstructing. We have to show cooperation at every step." Cassian straightened. "We are cooperating," I know Maris said, "but the system judges intention through documentation." Noah opened his laptop. "We need one more piece. Something that links the girls to a formal event, anything official, a community clinic log, a vaccination record entry, a school attendance attempt." Cassian glanced at the survival schedule in the drawer, then at Lenny and Nova. Two 5-year-olds with an adult-level understanding of what moving meant. "We'll find it," Cassian said. That afternoon, Cassian accompanied Maris and Noah on a careful route. Places the girls had mentioned indirectly without pressure. The bus station, the library steps, the community center. At each stop, Cassian kept the girls' dignity intact. He didn't ask strangers to tell a sad story. He didn't turn them into content. He simply requested confirmation of their presence, their names, their dates. A volunteer at the community center frowned, thinking hard. "I remember 2 little girls. Twins, always holding hands. They signed in once for Arts Day." Noah nodded. "We have that sheet." The volunteer shook her head. "Not that day. Another day." There was an incident with the sign-in system. We had to write names into a printed log. She walked to a file cabinet and pulled out an old binder flipping pages. Then her finger stopped. "No," she whispered, surprised. "Here." She pointed to an entry, Lenny Wren, Nova Wren. Next to it, a staff initials and a date. Noah took a photo immediately. "This is official enough to support continuity." Maris exhaled slowly. "This helps." Cassian didn't celebrate. Not yet. Back at the penthouse, Noah compiled the new evidence, attaching it to an updated filing. Maris drafted her own support statement about stability and ongoing oversight. Night fell. The building lights outside looked like floating stars. Cassian found Nova in the hallway holding the things that are true list. She held it up like a shield. "Can we add something?" Cassian knelt. "Yes." Nova thought hard, then said, "Paper can't be the boss." Cassian's throat tightened. "That's a good one." Lenny approached quietly, holding her marker. "Can I write it?" Cassian handed her the paper. Lenny wrote carefully, tongue peeking out in concentration. "Paper is not the boss." Nova nodded, satisfied. Cassian looked at those small letters, childish, uneven, brave, and felt the strangest thing. Hope didn't feel like fireworks. Hope felt like a 5-year-old writing a sentence she deserved to believe. The expedited hearing was scheduled for the next morning. Cassian arrived early, Noah at his side, Maris with her folder, the child advocate seated with Lenny and Nova in a quieter room designed for children, soft chairs, crayons, a small table. The court didn't want kids sitting in adult tension longer than necessary. It was a small mercy built into procedure. Nova whispered, "Is this another rule place?" Lenny answered first. "Yes. But the judge is kind." Cassian heard that and felt his chest tighten. Kids shouldn't have to rank adults by kindness. But here they were doing it anyway. In the courtroom, Pike appeared polished as ever. He greeted the judge with a respectful nod, as if he belonged in every room that mattered. Pike's attorney stood and spoke with the confidence of someone presenting a clean narrative, "Your Honor. These children require consistency with a legal guardian. The identity verification process is delayed, and the current caregiver, while well-intentioned, is not the lawful guardian of record. This situation risks confusion and instability. It was careful language designed to sound like protection." Noah stood slowly, calm and precise. "Your Honor, the process is not delayed. It is being completed correctly, with transparency, with oversight, and with verified stability." He presented the new binder log entry from the community center. "This confirms continued presence," Noah said. "It supports identity restoration. The children are not a question mark. They are a reality that paperwork failed to catch up with." Pike spoke directly then, voice soft, almost wounded. "I did what I could. I never meant harm. I want them with family." Cassian's jaw tightened at the word family being used like a stamp. The judge looked at Pike. "Mr. Pike, can you provide evidence of day-to-day care? Any contact records, any support documentation?" Pike's eyes flickered for a fraction of a second. "I have receipts. I bought supplies." Noah asked gently, "Do you have any proof of delivery, any record of the girls receiving those supplies? Any documented interaction?" Pike's lawyer cut in. "Your Honor, this is becoming adversarial." The judge's tone remained neutral. "It is already adversarial. We are deciding children's placement." Maris testified next. She spoke in measured, compassionate terms. "The girls are thriving in Mr. Vale's home. They're calmer. They engage in age-appropriate play. They have routines, meals, and emotional stability." She paused, then added carefully, "They also demonstrate a learned behavior of preemptive packing and hiding when they hear terms like transfer. This is not something children should carry. Stability is essential." Cassian kept his face composed. He would not let the courtroom become a stage for pity. The truth was enough. The judge turned to Cassian. "Mr. Vale, you understand that wealth does not equal suitability. Cassian nodded. Yes, Your Honor, and you understand oversight will continue. Yes. The judge studied him. Why are you doing this? Cassian stood. He didn't perform. He didn't plead. He spoke like a man who had finally learned the cost of silence. Because they asked for a place that doesn't send them away, he said, and because they shouldn't have to be perfect to deserve it. A pause. The judge's gaze softened, not dramatically, just humanly. Then she issued a temporary ruling. Cassian's caregiver authorization remained in place. Identity restoration continued under court supervision. Pike's suspension remained pending a full review. Pike's lawyer objected, but the judge was firm. In the child-friendly room afterward, Nova looked up at Cassian. Did we win? Cassian crouched. We held the ground. Lenny asked, is that good? Cassian nodded. It's very good. Nova smiled, small but bright. Paper isn't the boss. Cassian's eyes warmed. Not today. But as they left the courthouse, Noah's phone buzzed again. Cassian saw his face tighten, and he knew the story wasn't done rising. 2 days later, the identity restoration appointment arrived, an administrative step supervised by the court. It wasn't dramatic, but it felt like walking toward a locked door with only one key. Maris met them at a government office that was clean, bright, and quiet. There were posters on the walls about children's rights and family services, words that looked comforting until you realized how often they were needed. Lenny and Nova sat at a small table with a child advocate. They were given stickers, juice boxes, a coloring page with a smiling sun, age-appropriate kindness, nothing forced. Cassian and Noah sat in the adjacent waiting area, reviewing documents one last time, community logs, witness statements, Maris's reports, court orders. Everything aligned like a puzzle that had taken too long. Then the clerk called them forward. The clerk's voice was polite but procedural. We will need any record of birth, any hospital documentation, any parental identification. If unavailable, we proceed through witness verification and a court-supported affidavit. Cassian's chest tightened. This was the edge where a life could either be restored or delayed again. Noah stepped in smoothly. We're proceeding through court-supported affidavit and corroborating witnesses. Here are the verified entries and sworn statements. The clerk reviewed them, eyes scanning lines the way a scanner reads a barcode. Cassian hated how quiet the room was, how ordinary the stakes looked. A pause. The clerk looked up. There is an anomaly. Cassian's spine straightened. What kind? The clerk tapped a section on the screen. A partial file exists, redacted and incomplete. It shows the names were once entered, then marked unverified and closed. Noah's voice sharpened. Closed by whom? The clerk shook her head. I can't see the individual. But the closure code indicates the process was not completed. Maris exhaled slowly. That suggests someone started a file and let it die. Cassian's hands clenched. Because it was convenient. Noah met his eyes. This was where righteous anger had to become lawful action. Noah spoke to the clerk calmly. We request the reason code and the timestamp. We will attach it to the court's review of the Guardian of Record process. The clerk nodded. I can provide the closure code and date. Cassian felt the tension shift, because now they weren't just proving identity. They were proving why identity had been denied. In the child room, Nova colored a sun with extra rays. Lenny wrote her name carefully on the page, practicing letters like they were building blocks. The child advocate asked gently, Do you know your full name, Lenny? Lenny looked up. Lenny Wren. Do you want to keep Wren? Lenny glanced at Nova. Nova nodded once. Lenny answered softly, Yes. It sounds like a bird. Birds aren't stuck. Cassian's throat tightened. The clerk returned with forms. We can proceed. The court affidavit will allow provisional documentation. Finalization will follow after the judge's last review. Noah nodded. That's enough to open access. School healthcare services. Cassian exhaled, feeling something uncoil in his chest. Maris leaned in, voice low. This is the last door before forever. Cassian looked through the window into the child room. Nova waved a sticker at him like a trophy. Lenny held up her coloring page with her name written neatly. Cassian waved back, smiling softly. For the first time, the girls weren't waiting for a place. They were walking toward a life that could finally keep them. And outside, beyond the bright government office, the bridge still existed, but it no longer owned their story. The final review wasn't loud. It was the kind of quiet that makes every breath feel like testimony. The judge sat with a stack of documents that represented a life: the community binder log, the library statement, the clinic note, Maris's reports, the court-supervised affidavit. Proof that Lenny and Nova weren't new, weren't unknown. They were simply unrecognized, long enough to become a problem. Pike's attorney tried one last clean argument. Your Honor, identity remains provisional. Permanence should wait. Noah rose calm as a locked door. Your Honor, permanence is not a reward for children. It is the foundation they grow on. The judge looked at Cassian. Mr. Vale, this will require continued oversight. It will require patience. It will require long-term responsibility, not a rescue moment. Cassian didn't hesitate. I'm not here for a moment. The judge nodded once, then turned to Maris. Ms. Calder, do you believe this placement supports the children's best interest? Maris answered with steady conviction. Yes. Their routines are stable. Their anxiety behaviors decreased. They trust. They play. They sleep. The judge's gaze shifted to Pike. Mr. Pike, the court requested evidence of relationship and ongoing care. You provided none. Pike's smile was gone now. I was overwhelmed. The judge's voice stayed level. Then you were not a guardian. You were a line on a form. She set down her pen. Temporary caregiver authorization will transition to extended court-approved guardianship, pending final adoption proceedings. The children's identity documents will be finalized under this court's supervision. Cassian felt his chest loosen like a knot, finally remembering how to let go. No applause, no theatrics, just one sentence that changed everything. These children will not be moved again without cause. Outside the courtroom, the air felt different, lighter, like the world had stopped leaning on their shoulders. Lenny and Nova sat with their advocate as a clerk brought a simple folder. Inside were provisional documents, clean paper, official stamps, the first legal proof that the girls existed in the eyes of the system. Nova peered at the page. It has our names. Lenny traced the letters carefully, as if they might smudge away. It works. Noah smiled softly. It works. Nova's voice turned small. Everywhere Maris knelt beside them. Everywhere that matters. School, doctors, programs, all the places kids belong. Lenny looked up at Cassian. So if someone asks, we don't have to say sorry and go. Cassian swallowed hard. No, you don't. Nova took Cassian's hand without asking her first unplanned trust. Do we still keep our bird name? Cassian glanced at Noah, then at Maris, making sure every step stayed respectful and lawful. You can, Cassian said gently. Ren can be your name, and we'll finalize it the right way. Lenny leaned closer to her sister. Birds can fly, she whispered. Nova nodded, and they have nests. Cassian felt his eyes burn, but his voice stayed steady. Yes, and you have one. Noah handed Cassian a final page, an outline of the next steps. Not a fairy tale. A process. Court dates. Home visits. Supervision. Stability. Cassian signed, not like a billionaire closing a deal, but like a man placing his whole future on the line for two small lives. Nova watched the pen move and whispered, satisfied, paper is not the boss. Cassian smiled, voice low. Not anymore. On the drive home, rain returned soft this time, gentle, like it had nothing left to prove. Cassian asked the driver to slow down as they approached the overpass. The bridge appeared steel and concrete and memory. Nova pressed her palm to the window. That's where we had Pillar 3. Lenny nodded quietly, holding the folder on her lap like it was made of glass. Akshini stopped the car not to look back in pain, but to close the door properly. He got out, first walked around, and opened the back door. The girls hesitated. Cassian kept his voice warm. You don't have to get out. We're just saying goodbye. Nova slid out carefully, scarf wrapped around her shoulders. Lenny followed, gripping her sister's hand. They stood beneath the bridge, but the world didn't feel the same. The shadows didn't feel like owners anymore. Lenny looked up at Cassian. We don't need the schedule now. Cassian nodded. You can keep it as history. Nova's eyes traveled across the concrete. This place isn't home. No, Cassian said. It never should have been. Lenny held up the folder. Now we have a name that works. Cassian crouched to their height, rain dotting his coat like quiet applause. And you have a home that stays. Nova leaned into Lenny's shoulder. Lenny squeezed her hand. Then Nova said, small and certain, let's go to our nest. Cassian stood one hand for each girl. Yeah, he whispered. Let's go. And the bridge stayed behind them, just steel, just concrete, no longer a chapter, still writing itself. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.